All right, thank you for listening to another episode of Remake Rewind. I'm Mike. As always, with me, I've got my good buddy Alex. How are you doing, man?
Another one. I'm good.
Another one. DJ Khaled.
Yeah,
He's
DJ
not on
Alex.
He's not on the podcast.
Thank God.
He doesn't go down on his wife, so we don't support him.
There's two requirements to be on this podcast.
You gotta do the kind of link. Well, you don't have to do that. You just have to reciprocate. You gotta go down on your loved one if they want it. If they like it, you gotta do it. Yeah. But that's not what this podcast is about. This is not a cunnilingus podcast, okay? What this is... Well, we're getting off to a great start. What we do here on Remake Rewind is we talk about movies that have been remade or rebooted. We kind of compare and contrast. We don't necessarily talk about which one's better, although a lot of times you can tell where we lean on that. But we really just decide whether or not the remake or reboot was necessary, if it added anything to cinematic history, and that's what we do here. So, without further ado, we're gonna be talking about Total Recall.
We're totally gonna talk about it.
And this is, for longtime listeners, this will be the second time we've covered it, but that was, the first year. And we're coming up on year 5, and we've got Alex. He loves Total Recall, and he wants to talk about it, so I'm going to talk about it again with my buddy Alex.
Yeah, that's me. We're going to do it.
So Total Recall, classic, at least the 1990 one is classic. I'm assuming you've seen it before.
Yeah, many times.
And I know you did ahead of time, because when we were talking about the rental strategy, because normally I rent the movie, and then you borrow it, whatnot, but we both talked about buying it on Blu-ray just because it's like, how do we not already own this? So I went and got it on 4K Blu-ray this weekend.
It's got the director's commentary and Arnold as well. Like, it's worth it just for that. It was like $6 at Amoeba.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I got the 4K one, so I paid $20, but it's fine.
We heard you brag about it the first time.
Yeah, it was worth it. It's worth it. I did something a little different this episode around. Normally, I watch the original and then I watch the new one, but Katrina hasn't seen the original version.
I did too. I watched the new one first.
So I watched the new one a week ago.
That's so funny.
For recording, and then I watched the new one with her over the weekend. And I don't normally like doing that because I start comparing the original one to the new one instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
But it was fine. It was totally fine in this thing. They're very different movies. It's a classic. Paul Verhoeven, Robocop. He also did Starship Troopers. Showgirls. I was going to say striptease, but I meant Showgirls. Yeah, but he's done a ton of incredible movies, and you're going to get a good special effect movie. You're going to get some over the top graphic violence and whatnot, and that's exactly what you got with this movie. And I'm really excited to talk about it. It's a fun movie. As a kid, every time this came on TV, I watched it. Literally every time. It doesn't matter what point of the movie it was on. My dad would stop and watch it if it was on TBS, TNT, whatever.
Yeah. That's what Bill Simmons would call a rewatchable.
Yeah, it's totally a rewatchable movie, and I'm assuming you have the kind of the same history with it.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you how many times I've seen it, because I feel like when I was growing up in the 90s, we had HBO and Cinemax and whatever. And this was on there very frequently, and whenever it was on, I would watch it.
Yeah, it's just a fantastic movie. I'm just going to say at the top, this is the Len Wiseman, who directed the 2012 remake. He had a really big kind of shoes to fill when he decided to remake this movie. So, do you want to summarize this one, or do you want to summarize the second one?
I'll do the second one.
All right, so I'll do this one. So this is Total Recall, 1990. I always forget how recent it was. Because it's an Arnold movie, I just assume it's an 80s movie. But no, this was 1990. I was 2 years old when this movie came out. Just a little baby toddler Mike watching Arnold fucking killing people on Mars. It's great. But anyway, what this movie is about is you have Arnold Schwarzenegger plays dual roles. He plays Hauser, and he plays Douglas Quaid. And basically what's going on here is he's just an everyman. Arnold Schwarzenegger just blends in perfectly. He's just an average Joe, red-blooded American working a construction job, and he just feels unfulfilled. So what he decides to do is he decides to go to Recall, which is a place where they can inject memories, and he wants to have a vacation to Mars injected. And then they upsell him, because you know how salespeople are. They always got to upsell you. They upsell him a package where he can be a spy. And then this is where the movie gets a little weird. Is it a dream? We don't know. Is it real? We don't know. But basically, it turns out that he already had his mind wiped, and he actually really was a spy. And he decides he has to go to Mars and get to the bottom of this and figure out, is he a double agent? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? And he's got to save Mars. And that's pretty much what it is. It's a mindfuck movie with a bunch of action.
Well done.
Thank you, bud. I appreciate it. Highlights for you, man. Go. Tell me what you love about this movie. What don't you love about this movie? Tell me how you feel.
Whenever you're ready to let me start going, I'll go.
I'm ready, bud. Go for it. Whenever you're ready.
I'm almost ready.
You good to go?
Yeah, I'm waiting on you. It's interesting talking about what I like and remember about this movie. Because as you said, we both watched the new movie first. So as I'm watching the new movie, I'm kind of thinking about what I missed from the original movie and what I'm expecting, and what memories are popping up as I'm seeing something that's sort of vaguely reminiscent of this original movie. And then going back and watching the Arnold one second, can't help but be comparing it to the original one. So three boob chick.
Yep,
is what I'm getting at.
Yep.
No. My point is that there is so much personality and fun in this movie that is not present in the next one, and we will get to that. But I think that's one of my big takeaways from the Arnold Total Recall is how fleshed out the characters are and how much fun the movie is in terms of like telling jokes, like the normal Arnold one-liners, but also just like the violence is so visceral and like cartoonish that I feel like you can't help but kind of have a good time unless you're totally turned off by violence or whatever.
Just a wet blanket.
But when their eyes are bulging out of their skull, or when Hauser or Quaid, I guess, is pulling the tracker out of his nose, and it's that incredible Arnold fake face. Man, it's just so much fun.
And it's just unapologetically weird and out there.
Yeah.
And it does the bare minimum to explain certain things. Like, eventually he gets to Mars and there are all these like mutants, and some of them have psychic powers, and some of them, can guess your birthday, and some of them are like prophetic leaders, and some of them are just really ugly and look like they have vagina faces. But they explain it. Yeah, they they explain it like very loosely, like, oh yeah, when we first got to Mars, we had substandard protection, so like everybody got mutated and whatnot, and it's just like good enough.
Yeah, and what's funny is that exactly good enough. Like there's just enough of an explanation where it's like, yeah, that's fine, and they sort of hint that they found some alien, alien artifacts and whatnot. It's like, yeah, well, they're on another planet. We don't know what's going on there. Maybe it's activating things in our body that we don't know about. There's just enough there for you to sort of to let your imagination run wild. And the new one sort of has the opposite problem where it's like, yeah, there's a train that goes through the Earth in 17 minutes. Don't worry about it. It's like, well, hold on. I have a lot of questions about that.
And we'll get to those questions.
Yes.
And we'll try to sort them out.
No, we won't.
But this is not the time. One of the things that I love about this movie, and this kind of just, it's the trope of the late 80s, early 90s movies with Stallone and Dolph Lundgren and Arnold Schwarzenegger, where the action is, and this is like the one thing that I'll give a little bit of credit to the newer one, is being a little more imaginative with the action. But like, this is the heyday of when you could just have a muscly hero man, not have any technique, where he just like, there are several scenes where he takes on like 10 plus dudes on his own, and it might just be like he pops out of a corner with a machine gun and he's able to mow down like 3 or 4 people without even aiming. And when he's like fist fighting people, he's not really fist fighting, he's just like flailing around, and his arms just happen to connect and cave in a person's skull or send him flying against the wall. And it's just like, but it's still so fun because it's fun to watch Arnold, just this giant Austrian man, just manhandling a bunch of goons.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about the understanding that Arnold and Verhoeven and directors and actors like those guys, and there aren't a whole lot, but there's an understanding that they have of this very specific type of cinema where they know how to sell the punches and sell the balance of humor and violence and whatever. And you're talking about fight scenes specifically. And I just think they fucking know what they're doing, man. And when it doesn't work, it's very silly and very obvious.
Right. And I also want to like give credit, like we're kind of like acting like we're saying this movie's very entertaining, but we're also kind of acting like it's cheesy and not good and schlock, but it's not that. Like there's incredible special effects. The characters are endearing, and you know, in the short interactions you have, and you have to like build this world, and you also have to have this climate of, is it a dream, is it not a dream, is he a bad guy, is he a good guy, you know, who's lying to him, who's in on the conspiracy, who isn't. But you still get like really connected to a handful of characters really quickly. And I also have to say, like, you know, Arnold isn't known for being a actor's actor, but like he does really good in this dual role. Like when he's Hazar, which honestly, that's a much more appropriate name for Arnold Schwarzenegger character. Like he looks like a Hazar versus Douglas Quaid. But when he's like talking to Doug Quaid over the videos, like he's really good in that like arrogant, cocky Hasser
Yeah, well, I think
role.
he's just being Arnold.
I mean, but like the Doug Quaid role is what like Arnold normally is. So I mean, but like I thought he did a pretty solid job with the like, you know, get your ass to Mars, don't forget you're me kind of stuff. Like I think he does a really good job selling that.
Yeah, there's a lot of really fun, not fun. There's a lot of good Arnold work there, but I think there's also a lot of like awful acting, particularly Arnold and Sharon Stone. There's just some scenes where they're just like off.
One of my favorite things about this movie, you brought up Sharon Stone, and this is drastically different than the new one, and we'll get into that, of course, in a little bit. But like Sharon Stone plays his wife, who also happens to be, you know, work for Cohagen, and she's undercover trying to keep him in line and make sure, you know, he doesn't go off to Mars, which that part doesn't make sense. Like almost everybody's trying to keep him in Mars, but Cohagen actually wants him to go to Mars, but he doesn't like fill in anybody with what's going on. Mm-hmm. So it's like, what if he didn't actually get to Mars? You need him to get there. But which Sharon Stone's character, Laurie, is trying to prevent him from going anywhere until Richter, played by Michael Ironside, shows up and they can detain him. And so first she tries to seduce him, and he's like, nah, not right now, girl. And then so they start fighting, and she punches him in the dick like 5 times. And like
twice.
30
twice. And then again the next time she sees him.
Yeah, so it's 3 times total, but it's like
comedy comes
every time they do it, it's just like the whole frame is filled with Arnold's crotch, and you see a fist or a foot hit it. It was just chef's kiss.
The cinematography in those Arnold crotch shots is out of this world.
Yeah, and I also just like really like the world building at the beginning, where like he's working a construction job, and everyone's like, hey, and then like you have like Bob Hoskins is like, don't go to recall, man, don't do it. And then like they show up, and they all get murked by him, and he like, and I like how he's like just strong. He's like, I didn't realize how strong I am. Like when they attack him, he's just like flailing around, and the goons are flying like 6 feet against the wall, cracking their skulls, and he's just like looking at himself like, what did I do? Like he did it all on accident. Arnold's so funny.
Arnold's greatest cinematic achievement is that every single movie he's able to make us forget that he's Mr. Universe. You know? The guy is like a slab of granite. And you go into these movies and you're like, he's an everyman. He's working construction, just an average Joe. Him and Bob Hoskins or whoever.
Yeah, it's not Bob Hoskins, but it could be his brother. Yeah, right. Bob Hoskins. But the other thing that I think is funny, like this is based off a short story by Philip K. Dick, and the guy's supposed to be an everyman, and like Arnold like sold it himself on the role. He's like, yeah, but wouldn't it be much more impressive if like this godly superhuman superhero type is able to be manipulated by recall and all these people? That shows the power on this. Like you can take a superhero and make him believe he's a nobody. And I'm like,
and that's also, you know, we'll kind of get into the fantasy versus reality element of this movie, but that's a strong tick in the side of this is all reality, right? Is that why does this everyman look like that unless he is a specially trained military operative? Makes more sense that he's a military guy if he looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, not a great spy, but
you could be a good, you know, in good shape and be strong and physically fit as a construction worker, but you know, you're not Mr. Universe bodybuilder type dude. Yeah. So, I guess we should start getting into, you know, the fantasy and the sci-fi element of it. Like, the movie starts with him on Mars walking around with Melina, and like they just both kind of fall down a mountain and like faces cracked. And
There's so many good, yeah. There's so many good Arnold sounds in this movie.
Yeah, Arnold sounds and his funny faces. Tasmanian devil. But you know, his face is like blowing up and swelling up, and then like he wakes up and Sharon Stone's like, "Hey man, it was just a dream. Don't worry about it. Was there any girl in that dream?"
Is this before or after the Evian product placement?
Yeah, I know, right? And then, you know, he very quickly goes about his day and is just like, I'm gonna go to recall, even though like all my loved ones and my best friend tell me don't go to recall. And then he goes to recall and he's like, I just want to go to Mars. And he's telling his wife like he really wants to go to Mars for vacation. Well, let's go to Saturn. No, babe, I really want to go to Mars.
She's like not a great partner. She didn't even hear him out.
No. But her mission is to not send him there.
If it's reality.
Right.
If it's just a dream, then she's kind of a shitty wife.
Yeah, so so he goes to recall and he's like, yeah, I want to plant a vacation. And the guy upsells him and is like, oh, I can make you a spy.
That's one of my notes. He's a good salesman.
Yeah, he's like, I don't need it. And he's like, do it. That whole premise doesn't make sense where it's like, let's say you and I went to recall and we're like, we're going to be spies. Like, so our memory is that we were a spy for 2 weeks only. Like, how does that, like, how do you go back to living your normal life and thinking you were a spy?
Yeah, so that's one of my, we can get into it more with the other movie, but I actually like it. I like the sales pitch more in this movie because they make it very clear that they're selling you the memory of an ideal vacation. And I think it's a much cleaner, better explanation than the new movie does. But
I agree.
But you're right. This idea of being a super spy for a little bit doesn't really make sense.
It breaks that memory where it's supposed to be indiscernible from your life. But then he goes and they start selling like, hey, do you want to like fuck somebody who's not your wife in this memory? And then, so like he gets to like create this perfect woman. Like, what do you want? Athletic, slim, athletic. What do you want? Blonde, brunette, redhead, brunette. What's the personality? Sleazy. And then it's like
demure.
And then he's like, I'm just gonna fuck this, hot chick in my dream, and then go back to living with my wife.
I know. You have like maybe not everybody, but I think a lot of people would have like crushing guilt over something that didn't even happen.
Right. Well, it's because it would be indiscernible to a real memory in your life. So it's like, yeah, that's weird. And that's one of the ticks for like, oh, this is a dream, because like, why would she pop up in the little video monitor of the mock-up of the woman that's going to be in the dream? But he also dreamed her before, and he uses that as an argument later on, because there's a point where they're trying to rope him back in after he gets to Mars, and like they send a doctor in quotes. And he explains, he's like, yeah, but I dreamed about her before. And he's like, yeah, dude, we inserted a memory into your brain, so your brain is filling in the gaps and putting her in. Like, that dream was part of the memories that we put in.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So it's like, that does make me think, this could be a dream, because, like, it is weird that this woman, Melina, is shown on the screen in perfect clarity.
Yeah, and, that could also sort of be his... Maybe that's his interpretation. It's a little impressionistic.
Right. But it could also be that they are implanting, but then they also say they never implanted it. But once again, that could be part of the narrative they're implanting. So there's all these layers where you can never really know.
Now, how do you feel about the scenes where Arnold is not present? And there are not a whole lot in the movie, but there are definitely scenes where, when the salesman is alerted that he's having a schizoid embolism,
right,
he's not in that scene. He's in the other room trying to upsell, some woman.
Right. Or Dick Jones, a.k.a. Copenhagen.
Cohagen.
Copenhagen. Cohagen.
Leaving it in.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna leave it in. That was funny.
I'm owning it.
Cohagen's talking to like Richter. There are a few scenes where Arnold's not present.
And they're having like a little disagreement too. Like, how would Arnold know about that?
Yeah, he wouldn't. So there are little things, but that's for us. So I do think it's interesting that 30 years later, we're still there are still people like arguing online as to whether or not this happened or didn't happen. There's also things talking about like music cues. There's like 3 or 4 different places where the Total Recall theme pops up, where it's like, oh no, it's definitely a dream. Yeah. But I think I think that's really interesting that you don't really know for sure.
Yeah, unless you go on the internet and look up interviews with the director and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
But even the director has said like, it's supposed to be ambiguous.
So on the audio commentary, he says it's supposed to be ambiguous, but he and Schwarzenegger both come down on the side of it being a dream.
Yeah, and I think this one makes sense that it could totally be a dream. And There's certain the other thing that people say is the Mars sky is blue at the end.
Mhm.
And it wouldn't be blue because the reason our sky is blue is because it's reflecting the water. And all they did at the end of the movie was add oxygen.
But that's not the reason that our sky is blue.
Yeah, it's a huge part of why the sky is blue.
I mean, I think it's the bigger reason is that we're looking through however many miles of air, and air has a slightly blue tint because of the way the sun
it's because
reflects
of the
off it.
ocean.
Okay, we'll do some research.
Let's look it up right now.
No, let's not look it up right now.
I'm gonna look it up right now. This will take 30 seconds, if even.
No, let's really.
Why is the sky blue? The sky is blue to a phenomenon called Rayleigh scattering. Refers to the sky and electromagnetic radiation. Okay, it's not.
Yeah, that's funny. I was telling you that this is really boring airtime to be looking up why is the sky blue.
Nope. Okay. Anyway, but sure, fine.
No. But I like that you looked it up because I'm right.
You are right. Anyway,
Thank you.
moving right along, editing this out. No,
nope, leave it all in.
But let's talk about Mars.
You bought a ticket to the ride, friend.
Yeah, we gotta get to start talking about the tech in this movie is really cool. Like he gets a little suitcase from a guy, and
I wanted to talk about whether it's real or a dream a little bit more.
Okay,
because he says that on the audio commentary, which I think was done when they released the DVD. Maybe it was in the 90s, I think. But he's done interviews recently where he says the movie doesn't really say whether it's reality or a dream. It's really saying there's this reality and there's that reality, and they both exist at the same time. And his point was, or his goal was to make it indistinguishable and have both of them exist at the same time as sort of a postmodern, his words, take on it.
Right. And
so it's both. That's the answer.
I totally see that, and that makes sense. It's almost like a choose your own adventure. What do you want to believe?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think if I remember correctly, I did not go back and listen to the original episode that we recorded in 2017. I think I erred on the side of it was real back then, but now I kind of lean more on the side of it was a dream. So a 4-year difference makes me change what I think. So I think that's a really cool, fascinating thing that a couple years later I have a different interpretation. Of the film. Yeah. So I think
if I had to choose one of those two, then I'd probably say it's a dream as well.
Yeah. So some of the other things that are really
but it's a dream that he chooses to accept it as his new reality. And if the Total Recall memory implants are indistinguishable from real life and you only exist in your head, then if you choose that as your reality, then it's reality.
So the only other thing that I'm like on the fence about, so if it was a dream, like let's say he really was just a regular dude and he was implanted with the spy memory, he still went to Mars and fucked up shit on Mars and brought down Cohagen though, right?
No, because I think the movie, if it's a dream, the dream takes over the moment that he
goes to sleep.
Goes schizoid in Total Recall. I guess that's
so. You think he actually went schizoid?
No, he's probably in a coma on the table and they lobotomized him. But I'm saying that scene is where the split happens.
Or all of that is actually the memory, and we don't actually see where the memory ends because it ends with him still on Mars. And the whole point is it's supposed to be the vacation and then eventually gets back. So it could be that this whole thing's a dream, and like maybe down the line he wakes up and he's like, "Oh, that was pretty cool."
Yeah, maybe.
So who knows?
I want to say that's one of my favorite scenes, by the way, when he's having the schizoid embolism, and what's the woman doctor's name? I want to say it's like Melinda or something, or Belinda. The salesman walks in and she's trying to explain, and he goes, "Shut up, you dumb bitch!" And it's just like out of nowhere. His delivery is so good.
He's just like.
And then a moment later, like she kind of takes that or whatever. And then a moment later, she slaps Ernie, the younger tech, and you just see the shit rolling downhill.
Yeah. It's just perfect capitalism.
I fucking love
in a
that.
nutshell. But what I like about that is just like the salesman just comes in, mansplaining what's happening. And she's like, "No, because I haven't implanted the memory yet."
Yeah.
And he's just like, "Fucking kill him." Or like erase the memory, throw him in the dumpster, and hope he survives. He won't know anyway. And the shit rolling down the hill. Yeah. Some of the things I just want to bring up so that we can get to the next one. The technology is really cool, but like it's all fits in a suitcase, which doesn't make sense. Like the suitcase they give him is like just a normal size suitcase, but it has like the giant full size head that he uses for the disguise. 2 weeks, kind of thing. And then it also has like the holograph machine and the giant gun that he uses to pull the tracker out.
And the
that
fucking
thing is like the size of my arm.
And the laptop is more than half of the briefcase.
Yeah, it's insane how much stuff you fit in there. So that's another reason where it's like, there's no way he had all that gear.
Yeah.
I do like how he uses the hologram at the end, where first he tricks everybody, and then he's just standing there, and like the guards come, he's like, ha ha ha, you think this is the real Quaid? Yeah. It is, and he kills him. It's like, I think that's pretty funny, because like, you know, they did a similar thing in Escape from Escape from LA. It was the no, or was it New York? No,
I think
LA.
Right.
Yeah, it was LA. Yeah. So I thought, you know, that's kind of a fun way. And that movie came out. Which one came out first? When did Escape from LA come out?
You know, are you asking about Total Recall or New York and
LA? LA, Escape from LA, the sequel.
I mean, it came out after Total Recall.
Oh, okay. So so Total Recall did it first. I was thinking Escape from LA did it. Good for you, Total Recall. But at the end of the movie, they ignite the alien reactor, and it melts the ice in the core, and it makes
this oxygen volcano is one of my favorite parts of the movie too.
It's so cool.
Fucking oxygen volcano, bro.
Have to acknowledge, and I think it's hilarious. The glass that's keeping them safe is literally just glass. There's multiple occasions where they shoot the glass on accident, and it like sucks people out, and it's just like,
and the dome is pressurized, like, you know, to the same velocity of the fucking vacuum of space.
Yeah.
People
like
are going horizontal, being sucked out.
And it's just like, you know, even in 1990, when this movie came out, we had bulletproof glass, which is just, you know, a very thick plastic and whatnot. It's like, why would you make this? But I guess Cohagen doesn't give a shit about anybody, so he's cutting corners.
Yeah, exactly.
But then
that's why the mutants exist.
But there's also a point where like the Richter, like his own goons are like, hey, Richter, stop fucking shooting that thing. There's fucking glass there. You're gonna get it's like. And like the glass is like right next to the street. Like somebody could lose control of a vehicle, which happens multiple times.
Or someone could just shoot it, some terrorist, and they have insane. Terrorists.
And then we got to address Quato. Quato's so cool.
Yeah, Quato's so cool,
out of the man's body.
I was so fucking disappointed that he wasn't in the new movie.
Open your mind.
Quaid.
It's just a fun movie. It's a great movie. I had a blast watching it, and Katrina was laughing her ass off the whole time. Yeah. She had a blast watching it too. So
both of us were too, and I don't think it's not laughing at the movie. Like we're laughing when the movie wants us to laugh. It's
just a great time.
Yeah. So do we want to shotgun some favorite quotes? Because I have a few.
Yeah, shotgun a few.
Clever girl. I feel like every 5 years some movie should say clever girl, because that's in Jurassic Park too, right?
Yeah, 3 years later.
This isn't a quote, but when he jumps through the X-ray glass, so fucking cool.
Yeah, that was Katrina's like favorite part.
So
it was
cool,
just so funny.
Also, he uses the guy on the escalator as a human shield.
Yeah, there was so many. He's a random civilian as a meat shield.
The poor guy gets shot 100 times, and then someone steps on his head. When he is trying to get the suitcase from the woman at the payphone, and she goes, "Fuck you, you asshole."
Yeah.
The Johnny Cab, he doesn't pay the Johnny Cab, and the Johnny Cab's like, "That'll be $15. You'll be reported to the police." He goes, "Sue me, dickhead."
Man, the one that I had written down was the "fuck you, asshole." So
it's so
got
good.
That one.
Get your ass to Mars.
I also Get Your Ass to Mars is classic.
Did you notice that there's a little The Matrix did a little Total Recall reference? And when I say little, it's the entire fucking premise of the movie.
The red pill.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
I haven't never seen anybody talk about that. That was really cool to see.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Oh, the other thing I just want to notate. So towards the end of the movie, when we find out that Benny, who's been kind of an ally the whole movie, is both a mutant but also like is working for Cohagen, and he betrays
I got
everyone.
5 kids, man.
Yeah, everyone, like all of a sudden, like all of Cohagen's goons show up and they like start blasting everybody away.
Yeah,
and then they shoot Quato in the head, and Katrina's like. She just starts laughing. She's like, "Fuck that! You shot it in the head. I would have killed it with firing."
Well, speaking of shooting mutants, one of my favorite moments from the movie is when they shoot the 3 boob chick.
Oh yeah,
and I mean, like genuinely, I thought that was really well done, because she shows up and you're kind of like, "Whoa, this is cool." Like, I don't know anything about this character except, you know, I know 3 things about her. But it's just like a character that I'm endeared to, and then immediately they take her away violently, and it like really works. I was like, oh fuck!
Right after that, when they kill her, when they shoot her
in the
Dean
back.
Norris from Breaking Bad, he plays one of the mutants. He does a really impressive high kick and kicks the guy who shot through Poop Chick.
That's right.
If you don't have anything else, I've got one question for you that I kind of want to like end this particular one.
Give these people air. Oh, also he says, I'm going to drill you, sucker.
I love that he kills the giant drill with a little smaller drill.
And he says, screw you.
Screw you.
Oh, last one. See you at the party, Richter. All right, I'm done.
All right, so I'm going to pose a question for you. So the very first episode of the podcast you and I did was Doom. So Doom was originally going to star Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was attached to it for quite a while.
That's wild.
This takes place on Mars predominantly. He's also like a fucking brutal, fighter and whatnot, not unlike Doom guy. And this takes place, the end of the movie is them starting some unknown alien tech. Could this have been a prequel to the unmade Arnold Schwarzenegger Doom movie that was supposed to come out in the late 90s?
Absolutely. I wish it got made.
Excellent. All right. What have you been up to, bud?
I wasn't ready.
God, that was a great segue.
Well, luckily we're recording this onto a digital platform, and all you need to do is cut it out.
That's all I need to do if I wanted to cut it out.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't.
But you never cut anything out, so.
I cut a lot out, actually.
We'll see. All right. Well, sir, I watched the entire Harry Potter series.
As did I.
Yeah. Those are some good movies, man.
And the Harry Potter reunion.
I did not watch the reunion. I don't really care to. Was it good?
It was good. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah.
We got passes to Universal Studios, so we've been twice, I think. I'm looking at Scarlett. She has her headphones on. We've been twice since we've been watching the movies, and it's just magical. Harry Potter Land is wonderful.
It is great. Katrina and I had season passes like 2 years back, and we live literally like you could see it from our old apartment. You could see Hogwarts.
Yeah.
We're like a 10-minute walk or like a 3-minute drive. So
maybe
we
the four of us should go together sometime.
Yeah, we're not going to buy passes again.
I mean,
we've got our Disney passes right now.
You could go for one day. Yeah, and I went on Flight of the Hippogriff and whatever the other one is. The one inside Hogwarts got stuck while we were on it.
That happens because it's one of those rides where you get on a conveyor system. So if one person, one handy capable person or one person just fucks up, they have to stop the whole ride.
Yeah, it kind of took me out of it. It wasn't a whole lot of fun. Anyway, watched Don't Look Up, which I really enjoyed, but also made me very sad.
It's like a documentary almost.
Yeah. We watched Best in Show.
Nice.
We had watched Mascots, I guess a week and a half before that, before Christmas. So it was cool to kind of follow it up with another Christopher Guest. Last time we talked was West Side Story, right?
It is, but we recorded it twice, and so I know we didn't say everything that we watched. And we're like, I'll just say a few things like I technically watched the first Harry Potter movie and the special before we re-recorded West Side Story, but I didn't count it because it was recorded out of order. It's fine.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I guess I watched Last Action Hero before West Side, so I think I might.
Yeah, that you brought up on West Side Story.
But cool to see more Schwarzenegger. That was before we decided to do this. I watched Mr. Right with Sam Rockwell. I don't know if I mentioned that when on the re-recording. Okay, Matrix Resurrections.
Yep.
Nightmare Before Christmas and Goodfellas are the other ones.
Yeah. So I've got a few. I watched all 8 Harry Potter movies in the special, so that obviously took up a chunk of time. But I also watched Encanto on Disney Plus.
Oh,
delightful.
Yeah, I want to see that. Yeah.
It's delightful. The first 3 episodes of Peacemaker dropped last week.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch those.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I love them. I love the show. It's so good. It's fun.
That's great.
I did what was the other thing? My notes are gone. I saw some other stuff. Not a big deal. Been playing a lot of Halo still. Got on the multiplayer and just been trying to get good at it. And as of yesterday, I think I got good at it finally because it's been so long since I played a multiplayer game.
I wish we could play that together.
I don't know if it does split screen. I should find out. You can come over and play it if it does split screen.
That'd be fun. It should. Halo always has.
Yeah, but that's pretty much everything. I mean, 8 Harry Potter movies is quite a bit. Oh, Space Force. I watched Space Force. That was the other thing.
How was that?
I had no desire to watch it based off the trailers, but I was so bored the other day, and I like put it on while I was cooking,
Yeah.
and you know I was cooking a dish that takes like an hour to make, and I've
Yeah.
got 2 episodes. The first episode is very meh, but the second episode on, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was hilarious.
All right, I'm gonna watch it based on your
Yeah,
recommendation.
I really enjoyed it. So, all right, man. Why don't you summarize the 2012 Total Recall?
Oh my god. All right, I'm gonna see if I can beat if I can top your synopsis of the last one.
Do it.
In need of a vacation from his ordinary life, factory worker Douglas Quaid visits Recall, a company that can turn dreams into real memories. Thinking that memories of life as a super spy are just the ticket, Quaid undergoes the procedure, but it goes horribly wrong. Suddenly, Quaid is a hunted man. He teams up with a rebel fighter on a search to find the head of the underground resistance and take down the leader of the free world.
Yeah, fair enough.
I did a little short one.
Yeah.
So the big differences here are that this movie takes place entirely on Earth. There's no Mars.
Yeah.
And instead, most of Earth has been rendered uninhabitable by chemical warfare, which is not explained beyond that.
Nope.
And the 2 parts of the world that are in play in the movie and that are the only inhabitable places on the planet are the British Isles and some of Western Europe, and the colony of Australia. And the British side of the world is sort of the rich industrial whatever side that does shit, and then all the poor people live in Australia. However, they are just a quick 17-minute train ride through the planet away from each other.
And it's not just a train, like it is literally just a hole in the earth
It's
that
a
they
gravity
somehow drilled through.
They call it gravity
without
elevator.
fracturing the whole planet, and it drops, and then halfway through gravity changes, so like inside the train thing, the capsule rotates, so that way you're upside, right side up again.
When we were watching the movie, I was under the impression that it was like an hour and a half or 2-hour trip, which makes sense to me, given the circumstances.
16 minutes.
Yeah, and then I reread the synopsis or whatever, and it was 17 minutes, and I was like, well, that is very fast.
Yeah.
Maybe too fast.
Yeah, I think that's too fast for I don't know, like gravity.
I'd have to do the math, but
yeah, maybe it has thrusters. I didn't see thrusters. They call it the drop, implying that it's just gravity doing the work. But I think it would take more than 16 minutes to fall that far. I don't know. Maybe not.
Also, I feel like the pressure at the center of the Earth, however they get through the core, the pressure at the center of the Earth would also crush you.
Right. Yeah. How do they get through the liquid hot magma?
Yeah. Is that a little Ben Stiller
Dr.
reference?
Evil.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
Dr. Evil. The other thing that I thought was interesting, so you mentioned Australia, and I feel like they wanted this to be like China, and then maybe they're like, oh, China will not release this movie in China if we make this in China, because the Australian part is very Asian inspired.
Well, I read a little bit about that, and it was meant to be, you could still be right, and maybe this is how they justify it, but they said that it's meant to be a melting pot of different societies, and the Asian one is very multiple Asian elements of that are very prominent, but it's supposed to sort of be a melting pot of a bunch of different societies. I wonder, China is in the northern hemisphere, right? As is the UK. So maybe it's just cleaner to say what's literally on the opposite side of the planet, so the gravity elevator can.
So the thing that the whole plot of this movie, there's 2 things that are causing the general conflict. One, they say there's so little space because there's only 2 parts of the world that are inhabitable, but and they're complaining, Kate Beckinsale plays Laurie, and then you have Colin Farrell plays Quaid / Hauser, and they're like, our apartment sucks, it's so small, and it's fucking huge.
It's beautiful.
It's made out of concrete, but it's huge, and
It's
they're
like a Frank Lloyd
complaining.
Wright.
And he's also being just a regular factory worker kind of guy, and he can afford that big place, and he can afford to keep Kate Beckinsale in theory happy. Beautiful Kate Beckinsale. His life is
Colin
not that
Farrell's
bad.
no slouch, friend.
Was that?
Colin Farrell is no slouch. He's a good-looking
No.
guy.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a good-looking couple.
Do we know what she does?
So she's supposed to be in law enforcement regardless.
Oh yeah, that's right, because she's taking care of the terrorists.
Yeah,
The terrorists
So,
that we never see.
that we never. Well, exactly. Well, and that's the other thing. So basically, what Cohagen is trying to do in this version is just man, we totally ran out of space in London. Maybe we should just kill all the Poors and take over Australia.
That classic idea.
he created there are no terrorists. Like there's a small group of like people who are like, hey guys, they're not really terrorists. Like Cohagen's the bad guy,
Right.
but Cohagen just keeps making these terrorist acts so that way he can get more budget to make more synthetic robots
Right.
to send over there and eventually have an invading force.
You know, from a storytelling perspective, even if that's true, there are still like there are hold on. There are still people that are committing acts of violence, right? Whether they're false flag, double agents or not, there are
Right.
people that are doing that, and there are events that are happening that people are witnessing. Like it's not made in a studio and put on the TV or
Correct.
whatever. And that was one of the more satisfying elements of the original movie is that you get to see some of that, and you see like people's reaction to it and stuff, and you get sort of emotionally invested in it. And in this movie, it's just happening on TV in the
It's just a
background.
news
It's
story.
like, all right, I guess that's happening.
Right.
There's like
And then,
a
like,
couple graffiti scenes.
what I did appreciate was them trying to, okay, he's gone under, whatever. He's a double agent, sleeper agent. He's had his memory erased, blah 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 blah. And so like one of the things, like he's teaching a new guy how to build a robot, and he's like, hey, don't put your hand on the chest because if the shorts out, you'll get a screw. And he has like a scar, but it was actually because he got shot in the hand in the dream sequence at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Quote unquote dream sequence. So I kind of liked that they tried to like give it a little bit of character. I do want to say, like, when this movie came out in theaters back in 2012, I did see this in theaters, and I remember seeing the trailer thinking like, this is either going to be really bad or it can be kind of cool because like,
Yeah, it was
yeah. And so I remember walking out of the theater and being like, I hated it. Like everything was in the trailer. There was nothing that wasn't in the trailer.
Yeah.
And then when I watched this, 4 years ago for the podcast, I remember hating it. This time around, I nothinged it, which I think is worse.
Well, I think so there's a director's cut, and this is maybe we want to get into the dream versus fantasy later, but there's a director's cut that the director is like, this really is my cut. Like this is the definitive version. The studio cut out a bunch of stuff that the reviews complained about later that like gave it some depth and explored the dream versus fantasy stuff later on. This really feels like a movie that would have been just fine, and then the studio noted it to death and made it even worse.
Yeah, but even still, like the acting isn't great. I will give kudos. I think visually, it's fantastic. It looks great because it's a really good mix of CG and practical effects. Like they built a lot of sets. They built, a lot of the rigs. They built the fake cars and everything. So like a lot of this looks real. So I will give them like the world looks incredible. It's just
and there's a lot of really good like sci-fi shit going on. You can tell there's a lot of like Blade
the gadgets
Runner.
are really cool. Like I like that weird like magnetic.
But I'm talking about
thing
I'm just talking about like the world that they built. Like the city, the colony that they're in is like very interesting. It's very Blade Runner-y. It's super cool. But it's also like
very Blade Runner.
It's also
and
just sort of
like Alien.
It's also just sort of gray and like derivative though. Like it's well done, but also like just the bare minimum of well done.
Yeah, I agree, but I mean, I think it works for something that's like slummy and they built in a rush because the world basically ended.
If the rest of the movie was more interesting, then I would not be nitpicking it.
Yeah, that's fair. But then, like, one of the things that I really didn't like was they're talking about how much space is a premium, space is a premium, space is a premium, even though it doesn't really appear to be. Like, the recall office is fucking huge. Like, it is like there's a lobby in the actual room where they have the recall bed is like conservatively like 800 square feet.
Yeah, and
if not larger.
And Recall also like seems to be like the Recall company in the original movie is like on the up and up. They're a real company,
a legitimate business.
Yeah. And this one is much more like it's not legitimate. It's like a kind of
It's
an illegal
seedy.
thing, but yeah, it's seedy. It's like kind of illegal, but it's kind of okay too because it's in the colony. It's kind of like the Wild West down there.
Yeah, and the one thing I would say, like, I did think that
John Cho I like seeing though.
I was just gonna bring him up. Like, he really sold the like, hey man, like, oh, you don't cheat on your wife. That's great. Like, oh, okay, like, what do you want? And he I think he really sells like how dangerous it can be if not done correctly. And then when he sees the turn, he's just like, what the fuck, you lied to me, and like it just goes.
I have a way to instantly make this movie more interesting. John Cho is Douglas Quaid.
That would have been fine because, like, what's weird, like, I think this was at that stage, like, Colin Farrell has movies that he's in that's good, like, In Bruges is good. I hear he's supposed to be like, I haven't seen Lobster, but I hear he's fantastic in The Lobster, and I'm really looking forward to the Batman.
Yeah.
But like this was in a stage where he's just kind of like meh.
This is like a common thing I feel like you see when you're either in LA or really paying attention to the industry, and maybe like you're a little bit older and you've seen the career arcs of multiple actors and actresses sort of come and go, or I should say male actors and female actors, whatever. And I think Colin Farrell is kind of a tale as old as time, like this really attractive, pretty good actor. Got an opportunity to step up to the plate for some leading man roles, and he got to do some big action movies that didn't quite work, whether or not it was his fault. And you either quietly retire, or quietly retire to TV, or you sort of take a break from the limelight and reinvent yourself as a character actor that takes all these weird choices. And it's funny that you bring up Batman, because Pattinson is sort of exactly that. I mean, he had a more successful leading man career, but he didn't want to be pigeonholed, and I think he wouldn't have been able to do Twilight type stuff for very much longer than he already was. And Matthew McConaughey is another one. These guys just kind of take a step back, do some really weird shit, and then they come back 5 to 10 years later in a big movie, but doing something a little bit more on their own terms.
Yeah, and maybe being a supporting actor for a little bit as opposed to the lead. Exactly. And just like keep working. Like none of these people that you brought up like disappeared. They just weren't in the A-list kind of lifestyle. It
depends on who you ask, though, right? Because if you ask somebody in Peoria or whatever, they might not be. I don't want to disparage anybody, but they're less likely
like
to be paying.
You think like random town in Illinois.
Well, no, that's a very famous saying. Will it play in Peoria?
Oh, I've never heard that expression.
Yeah. Well, you're just not very enlightened. So, no, but really, like somebody who it just sees the movies that come out in wide release on 2,700 screens or whatever, and they go see the Avengers movies and stuff, but they're not paying attention to what A24 is releasing at fucking
I like that festivals. A24 is always like your go-to non-blockbuster thing. Like you bring up A24, like I kind of want to go back and listen to like all of our episodes
I think
see how often
you
brought
Lobster,
up A24.
Anyway, I mean, a very, very, very famous studio. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, average Joe might not be hearing about The Lobster or The Lighthouse or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or Good Time.
It's funny that you brought up Avengers, because like Scarlett Johansson was supposed to be the Jessica Biel role.
Oh my God, she would have been better. I don't even particularly think that Scarlett Johansson's like a fantastic actor or whatever.
But she's consistent.
Yeah, and she's a bit more charismatic. Like both of them, Kate Beckinsale and Jessica Biel, were like fucking nothing.
So bland
for me. So bland.
So bland.
And I know they don't look alike, but they kind of fucking do. And they're both so boring in this movie that like I could not tell them apart at certain points.
I like Kate Beckinsale and other things. Like I thought, she's fine in Click. She's good in the Underworld movies, which is directed by the same guy, Len Weissman,
who is her
husband at the time, pre Pete Davidson.
Or are they not married anymore?
No, they're not married anymore. I mean, when you think she was stepping out on Len Weissman with Pete Davidson?
I don't know, man. After John Mulaney,
Scarlett Johansson had to choose between this and Avengers, and she correctly made the choice to do Avengers. So
yeah, and that's another example of I don't know what you'd call it, but the market seen things play out in different ways for different actors, right? Yeah. She made that decision. Maybe Colin Farrell was up for some fucking Marvel movie, and he didn't take that to do this, and it goes the opposite way.
Yeah, you never know. So I have to ask you, is Bryan Cranston a good actor or not? Because when you watch Breaking Bad, you're like, holy shit. But then he does like movies like this, and he's done like, there are a few movies that he's done over the years where like, why did he do this? And it's like, maybe it's I'm an older actor, I'm going to strike while the iron's hot and do as much, because who knows, like I might not work again because I'm, an older dude. But he was not good in this. He really phoned it in.
I think he is a good actor who maybe doesn't have a great manager / agent.
Yeah. Because like, I did not believe, like, Colin Farrell, even he, like, I don't think handled the action all that great. Like, it was kind of choppy, and, like, it seemed like they were maybe rushing through the choreography. Maybe he didn't have time to learn it well, so it didn't look great. But, like, Colin Farrell's character whoops all kinds of ass throughout the movie, and then, like, kind of gets owned by Bryan Cranston moving very slowly.
Yeah, it's like a star quarterback beating the shit out of his dad. It's just kind of sad.
It's super weird. And then, we find out that Colin Farrell's actually Ethan Hawke
in the extended edition.
Yeah,
Did you? Which one did you watch the same?
No,
one
I
did,
didn't.
right?
I
Okay.
watched the regular one, but I know that's
So,
a thing.
for the audience, that's part of what we're talking about is there's a scene in the extended edition, which we haven't seen, but apparently Ethan Hawke does a little cameo where he's revealed to be the original Cole Hauser, Carl Hauser, and they've done facial reconstruction to make him look like Colin Farrell,
Yeah.
which is
I
cool.
guess we
I
can.
would have liked to see that more.
I guess
I
we
do.
can get in.
I
Oh, go
do.
ahead.
Sorry, I do want to say I think Colin Farrell. I like Colin Farrell in general. I don't know if he's great in this movie. I think he's just fine. And if he was surrounded by better actors, he would look better just by osmosis, by juxtaposition. But I do appreciate that they wanted to do a movie where he looked a little bit more like an everyman. He's a little bit more believable that he could have just been a guy. Because then that removes the Arnold thing where it's like, well, why does this average Joe look like this?
Yeah. No, absolutely, and it's more in line with the story by Philip K. Dick that it was just an average Joe. So we can get into the. I think I did see. I think when I recorded this 4 years ago, I think I watched the extended cut because there was a few things that I noticed missing. Because like when I got to the end, I'm like, where was Ethan Hawke? Because I remember seeing that before. And then the other thing was like I remember them making a big deal about a tattoo. And that's not in this. So I didn't realize until this time around that I had seen two different versions of this movie. Because I think the director's cut, like if you watch the theatrical cut, I would say this isn't a dream. Like I think this like it really happened. He was a double agent. He turned sides. Blah 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 blah. But I think with the extended cut that I saw a few years ago, because I vividly remember them giving him a tattoo when he goes under, and then at the end of the movie, like they comment that his like tattoo's missing, or they like really zoom in on his arm or something like that, and it's not there.
Yeah, so I looked up Len Weissman's comments on that, and it seems like the director's cut really is saying definitively that it was a dream.
Yeah, but it's...
which is interesting because I feel like the movie that we watched, the theatrical release, is like pretty clear that it's not a dream.
Yeah, I agree. I would make it think that it is. This is what happened.
Yeah.
And I think that's comes down to like what's weird about this movie. And we neither movie did we go plot point by plot point, but all the major events, even though this didn't take place on Mars, happened. Like, his friends tell him not to go. He fights his wife when he gets back in, and, because the cops are on their way. There's a point where somebody shows up and says, hey, this isn't real. I've been injected into the memory to tell you that this isn't, this didn't happen.
Right. There's a 3-boob chick.
There's a 3-boob chick. There's the twist where, Cohagen comes and tells everybody what happened. And there's the talking to the suitcases. Like, all the major plot points that move the story along are identical, except for, the setting and it being on Mars. So it's just a little weird that.
Yeah. So I think
so different.
So that's another thing I read that I think informs that. Len Weissman said that he hadn't watched the movie in 20 years, but he also said in the next breath that he absolutely loves the original movie and stuff, but he hadn't watched it in 20 years, which I thought was kind of weird. But his process for getting into the idea of making the remake was to write down all of the things that he remembered from the original movie. And everything you just said, I think, are things that people remember from the original movie. 3-boob chick, red-haired lady fighting his wife, blah, blah, blah. And so he had those in his head when he was going into rewatching it and, starting to think about how his version of the movie would look.
Got it.
And that's kind of how it feels. It feels like somebody was like, hey, what are all the things that you like from the original movie? Well, we're going to, reference those in some way, but kind of do our own thing. And, I guess that works sometimes, maybe in the hands of a different, let's say, filmmaker.
Yeah.
Didn't work so much for me this time. I think.
No, I agree.
I was thinking while I was watching this that this movie might have come out a few years too early. Not for Wiseman or Colin Farrell or anybody, but just in general. I think if the studio is kind of kicking around the idea of remaking Total Recall in 2012, the same year that Avengers comes out and Marvel hasn't really made their stand. And I didn't look it up. I don't know when 21 Jump Street comes out. I think it's around the same time.
Yeah, I'd say pretty close. I'll look that up real quick.
Yeah,
you
while
keep
you're doing
vamping,
that,
and I'll look it up.
But I think that between 2012 and 2016, there's like an approach to remakes
Same year, 2012.
Yeah, so this totally makes my point in my head. I think that around that time, between like 2012, 2015, 2016, there's a shift in the way that people approach remakes, and it's a little bit more, maybe it's a little bit more self referential and a little bit more meta or whatever, which maybe not everybody loves. But I think there's also more reverence for the original source material and more like thoughtfulness put into making it its own thing, but like pointedly making it its own thing while also appreciating the original movie. Does that make sense?
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
I get what you're saying.
And I feel like this movie, he was just kind of like, yeah, I saw it 20 years ago. I loved it. I'll do a remake, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't feel like he really loved the original movie, to be honest.
But the thing is, I want to go back to one of the things you said before we wrap it up, that, you know, you feel like there was a better version, maybe not better, but like a version that, you know, was a little bit more eloquent that got noted down to, you know, to death. And this is a Sony movie, you know, and I feel the same way that, you know, we covered
no surprise there.
We did RoboCop, and I had the same criticism of RoboCop. Like, I remember coming out of the theater going, everything that was in the trailer was in this. Like, there was nothing in the movie that I didn't see in the trailer. And it was the same thing they did with, you know, some of the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies. They just showed way too much.
Yeah. I'm going to regret this if
so.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, like, Sony, I don't think for a long time hasn't made a good movie. It wasn't until they got with Marvel and worked with them to do their Spider-Man movies where they're like, oh, well, their two biggest grossing movies are the two Spider-Man movies.
And I think that's why they made that allowance or that concession to work with Marvel, because they realize they don't have any hits, and I don't know if they're self-aware enough, but they probably realize on some level that they don't know how to get those kinds of hits, and Marvel is just knocking out of the park every single time, and it's in their best interest to work with them. Yeah, I think Sony's been gasping for air for a long time. Hopefully that doesn't come back and bite me in the ass, but I don't think I'm saying anything that is not
that hasn't
understood.
Been said by a million other people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's clear where we're coming from, that this remake, while it was different, like, they took some swings, they took away the Mars, you know, kind of thing, and they took away some of the humor. Like, this is deadly serious, this movie. Like, there's I can't think of a single time where there was humor in the movie or where I laughed or anything.
But, you know, you're right, but as deadly serious as it is, the stakes in this movie are so unclear.
Yeah.
You know, like, Australia might become a colony of Britain, but they kind of already are. Okay, so people are gonna be enslaved a little bit more, but it seems like they kind of already are. I don't know.
Yeah.
And the original movie, it's like they're trying to give air to people on Mars, and they will die without it. An entire planet is at stake, and this guy wants world domination. It's a little bit more clear and interesting.
When you think about it, you know, at the end of the movie, they sabotage the drop. So now they are physically isolated. They can't get around. So, you know, there's some people who probably were from Britain who are in Australia and vice versa.
Everybody's out of work now.
Everybody's out of work, and it's like, well, what is the resource? Like, this could have doomed both sides. Like, this could be like the end of civilization as we know it. Who knows?
Somebody had to build the fall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, the people in the colony allow it to keep going.
Right. So it's like, I don't know.
I feel like they could just block their end. They could close the station.
I think it's safe to say that I don't think this one was necessary. Like, it didn't do enough different and it wasn't enjoyable. I don't think there's anybody clamoring for this movie, and, you know, it's kind of empty. Like, if it was at least good, I hate movies that are just movies. Like, I went into this one expecting to hate it because I remember hating it before, and I ended up thinking it was better than I remember it being, but I didn't have any emotional connection to this. It was just kind of I would have rather hated it than to just go
It's perfectly forgettable.
Yeah.
I wanted to just wrap it up with my final thought here. Everything that they changed about the original movie, like every decision that they made where they're like, we're going to break from the original movie, they made a less interesting version or less interesting choice. It was just consistently like, oh, that's different. Well, the other one was better every single time.
Yeah. Like, you're just asking to be compared to the original at that point, and you don't want to hold up that magnifying glass.
Yeah. It's just, it didn't stand on its own 2 feet at any point. Also, why is their apartment so greasy? Did you notice how many times they slid across the floor?
Yeah. That was weird. I don't understand
disgusting.
how that worked. I don't have anything else to say. But let's wrap it up, man.
Let's wrap it up.
Give us your plugs.
Yeah, I'm on the Instagrams at Dyslexic, DYS Alex IC. I'm on TikTok at Polishi, PULISCI. I'm on Letterboxd if you want to follow along with what I'm doing at Polishi, and I'm on Twitter at Polishi. And I just started making some new shirts finally, sort of movie and TV related, elder emo related puns, all that kind of cool stuff. And that's in my Etsy, which is Burn the Scene Boutique. So check that out on Etsy if you like any of the things I said.
Nice. And you can check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at MDXpods. You can support the show at patreon.com/MDXpods. Thanks for listening.